Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about how Dungeons & Dragons is going to unfold as an iSport. Alright, so it is my opinion that Dungeons & Dragons is the first iSport. It is the first, informational, interactive, first interactive, informational, and intellectual sport, okay? An iSport. So just as esports exist, I think Dungeons & Dragons is the first iSport. Now, if it's an iSport, why aren't we seeing it in stadiums? Why aren't we seeing it in leagues? Why aren't we seeing competitive play? Right now, it's the Sandlot. It's people playing in informal games, making their games better and better, treating it like a sport, being incredibly serious about it, trying to make their games better, trying to make their Dungeon Master performances better, trying to make their player performances better. And they are doing it in the public eye. Streaming games are huge, right? So right now, the iSport is in its Sandlot days. So I think what's going to happen is over the next decade, and by 2030, I think Dungeons & Dragons will be an official iSport. The D&D community will need to call for this and claim it, right, for this to happen, but I think it's going to happen for several reasons. One, the Dungeons & Dragons community deserves this. So, deserves what? Well, everything American football has right now. So, American football, what? Yeah, that's what we need, right? So, American football has fully made it. That community, the community of players, the community of coaches, the community of owners, the community of spectators, the community, the auxiliary communities around that, they are living the life of Riley. They have everything. They have respect, they have understanding, they have acceptance from the U.S. and the world. Right? And Dungeons & Dragons, in my opinion, is much more worthy of everything American football has than American football. Now, here's the thing. I don't think D&D iSports will grow in a vacuum. I think American football is poised to fall. Okay? Why? Why would that happen? Well, a couple reasons. The biggest one by far is we are a nation that used to do a lot of physical labor and used to value physical labor, and now I think overall Americans value physical labor less and less and are much more appreciative of knowledge work, okay? So we're becoming a knowledge work culture, abandoning physical labor, leaving it behind, valuing it less. I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm saying what I think is, okay? All right, so with that, I think American football is really a physical labor sport, a sport that resonates with people who used to do physical labor. I think it's a legacy activity, okay? Dungeons & Dragons, on the other hand, is perfectly made for knowledge workers and a culture of knowledge workers and a culture that values knowledge work, okay? It stresses a high intellect. It stresses interactivity. It stresses an emphasis on information. It is a modern, vibrant, powerful sport, okay? It isn't the first iSport, okay? So I think, now here, what's the second thing on why American football is poised to fall, in my opinion? I think it'll become like a niche market. It'll be very, very small within 10 years. Here's another one. There are concerns about the physical dangers of the game. Massive concerns that continue to grow. Number three reason why I think American football is going to fall and have far less scale and prominence than it does today. And that is the pandemic. So the pandemic is absolutely, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but I do know what it's like in the U.S. It has absolutely been brutal in the U.S. And American football, all right, we had this thing in America. I don't know how you guys in other countries dealt with it. We had this thing in America where they're like, only essential workers get to work, right? And so in my own city, there were companies, like there were small businesses, restaurants, right? Hardware shops, all kinds of different small businesses, and they're like, shutter your doors now. You cannot be open. You cannot serve the public, right? Now, I want you to go home, sit your butt down, and watch those essential American football workers go to work. And there are people in my town who are like, I can't pay my employees. There are employees who are like, I can't feed my kids. I don't have a paycheck, right? And I'm sitting here at home watching millionaires get to work when we are supposed to be only allowing essential workers. People were not happy, right? I think that's going to haunt American football. I really do. At multiple levels, at the professional level, at the semi-professional level, at the amateur level, they kept playing. And they were like, we mock essential workers. Clearly we're not essential. We don't care. We play. You guys can all like pack it up. We don't really care that you can't put food on the table at home. Watch our game. Right? It was bad. It was very, very, very bad. And I think American football is going to pay a price for that. And I think it's going to fall in popularity. And guess what? Nature abhors a vacuum. This is the time for Dungeons & Dragons to seize its position as the first iSport. So how would that work? How would we actually do an iSport, right? So Dungeons & Dragons is non-competitive, correct? Wrong. Here you go. So basically, you would break it down from a 4-hour session to a 2-hour session, and you'd bring in 10 teams, okay? And a team would be 4 players and a dungeon master, and they would run a 2-hour session, okay? You'd have 10 teams running these things simultaneously, so the entire event could be finished in 2 hours. And you could have 10 teams, right? All playing separately in separate locations, right? But they're playing competitively. And when they're done, there will be 2 judges for each crew. Somebody who's watched the entire game. And those judges would judge adherence to the mechanics, the power of the narrative, the terrain and minis, the beauty of the terrain and minis that have been crafted, the performance of the players, and the performance of the dungeon masters overall. 5 different attributes. 2 judges for each table of 5. You'd run this thing concurrently. You'd have 10 games running concurrently, and then the judges report, and you would have winners. And those tables can compete against themselves, and they can compete against the last year's performance at the same table by a different crew, right? And so this would be a really good structure for a powerful, fun, useful league that, in my opinion, would very, very easily not easily. This is going to be a lift. But very, very worthy. It would be worthy of this to replace American football. I really think American football is on the decline because it's a sport that resonates with a physical labor culture, which we no longer are. Dungeons & Dragons is a sport for intellects, right? For people who love information, people who love interaction, right? And I think the rise of Dungeons & Dragons sports is a good place to land. That's my thoughts. What do you think? How do we get there sooner than 10 years? Do you see any gaps in what I'm proposing, or actually more in what I'm predicting? All right. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.